2024 Legislative Breakfast Series. As always, we'd like to thank Todd Pronto and NEK-TV for broadcasting this event. It will be streamed on YouTube, and the videos will be available there. We'd like to thank the East Side also. And we would also like to thank any members of the media, if they're here, and especially the legislators for coming down and making this trip and talking to us all. This breakfast is being sponsored by Newport Downtown Development Corporation, and I'll give you Rick Ufford Chase here to speak on their behalf for a couple minutes just to start the meeting. Thank you all.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dan. I'm Rick Ufford Chase, Newport City Downtown Development, and we're really pleased actually to co-sponsor this breakfast, which this is now our second year to do, and grateful to Dan and the folks who put it together. And I just wanted to give you a quick word about Newport City Downtown Development because this organization is changing rapidly right now. We're going through a lot of expansion. We've got all kinds of projects going on basically in three areas. One is what we call destination development and promotion, and so that includes things like creating the Winter Saturday Dance Series that's going on, and anything that will draw people to downtown Newport. Second area is design and welcome. So how do we make the city feel more welcoming and just make it come alive and vibrant? And right now we're working on a project with the North Country High School to do a series of 10 sculptures that will go up in downtown Newport in the next few months. And then the big area that we're really pressing on right now is all around economic development. Couple of things going on there. We purchased the house on the corner of Union and East Main that all of you know because it's the busiest corner in the county as far as I can tell. And we've partnered with North Country Career Center, and their students are doing the remodel on that house that we will then turn over and do another project hopefully with them following. That's all actually coming with state money that was appropriated a year and a half ago to support workforce development and CTE live learning opportunities. So we're really pleased to be a part of that. And then the last area I'll just mention quickly is the Economic Development Task Force that we've put together with about 7 or 8 local downtown business or business-oriented folks who are looking at long-term economic development strategies for downtown Newport, very much in connection with the city, the staff, and the mayor and the council, saying what will it take for us to actually develop public infrastructure that will allow the development of the downtown in the long term. And that group has 7 or 8 members on it, including Dina Gray from here at Eastside, some really great folks who are thinking strategically and trying to get educated. So we're thrilled to be coming alive again in this way. This organization's done a lot of great work in the past, and the pandemic, hit that one hard like everyone else. So we've been rebuilding for the last couple of years, and grateful to be with all of you this morning. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rick. And as always, we begin with seniority, which, so y'all know who's coming first. Senator Robert Starr. He's been in the House since 1975 and serves Jay, Westfield, Montgomery, Lowell, Troy, Newport, Coventry, Ivisburg, Albany, Craftsbury, Greensboro, Glover, Barton, Brownington, Charleston, Westmore, Sutton, Burke, and Newark. He is the chair of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, and he's also on the Senate Committee on Appropriations. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dan. You didn't need to tell how old I am or anything. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with you. And to start with, I want to thank Dan and the Chamber, North Country Chamber, for hosting these breakfasts. And of course, it gives us a little time to talk. But the important part of these breakfasts is for us to hear what's on your minds and try to go back to Montpelier and get some things resolved that are issues for you. As Dan said, I sit on the Appropriations Committee as well as chairing House Ag. In the Senate, we all get to serve on 2 committees, or we have to because there's only 30 of us. So to divide it up, we do serve on 2 committees, and then there's a host of other smaller committees that, you serve on either before you start in the morning or after you get done in the afternoon. But, the first part of any legislative session, whether it's the first year or the second year, is getting reoriented, getting back into the swing of things, because we've been home for 8 months or so, and so like on the Senate Ag Committee, the first thing we do usually once we get rolling is to get the Secretary of Ag in, hear what has happened to issues that we passed last session, how they're working out, how they're going, and things, the flood issue of last summer, and then we had all that rain again later on and took all the snow away. And the big issue on ag is getting these manure pits, which most farms have now, the rainwater out of them. 70% of the water, 70% of the sediment in there was rainwater, but we've got several large farms, well, quite a few in our area, and so they had to get the manure pits down and spread this fall late. Well, it was in December actually, and but that's all going now pretty well. Milk prices are not good, but with the federal DMC program, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but the federal government, USDA, set up a program to offset the cost between the milk price and the feed price. And what we did last year in Montpelier was we said to these farmers, milk prices aren't going to be that good, so if you'll sign up for that program, we'll pay the premium. So we spent a little over $1 million covering that cost of the DMC program, but in return it brought into our economy almost $27 million. So, it was a pretty big return for the investment. And when you have farms in your area, that money is usually spent locally within your area, and it makes the economy, of course, all go better. On the Appropriations Committee, we're a pretty conservative bunch over in the Senate compared to the House, Woody. And we had a pretty tight budget from last year because we knew that the federal money was going away and that we'd better start living within our means. And so we planned it pretty tight. And week before last, now I guess it was, we had the state economists in and said, well, you guys have done pretty well. The economy, unemployment's low. The economy's going good. The food, the three things that they said that were causing us grief was fuel, food, and housing. That those things were all up, but all three or four of the we have four branches for taxing: general fund, the school fund, and personal income tax and corporate tax. And those were all up except for the transportation fund was down. So, of course, you say, well, I think we all knew why it was down, and that was basically because the price of cars were high, the inventory was low, and cars cost a lot. So, but they projected that would come back alive this year, and that we should be in good shape come the end of the year with a balance of about $35 million in the kitty. And so I'm going to have Woody speak to this when he gets up here. But this past Thursday, I think it was, the House always does the budget first, and then it comes over to the Senate. And we ran through it Friday afternoon, and it seems like the $35 million is all spent. And I'll have Woody talk about that, because luckily we have two on the Appropriations Committee, one in the House, one in the Senate. And Woody is on the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. A couple of things that are of concern that I think we've got to really pay attention to for our area, and that's our health care system. I know that North Country Hospital put in a bare bones budget increase, and the Green Mountain Care Board slashed that. I think it was by $500,000. And, you know, the hospital is, speaking of the hospital, is very, very important to all of us, and especially those of us that are getting a little age on us. But it wasn't just our hospital, it was seemed like the rural small hospitals. And so we got to keep an eye on that and try to get the Green Mountain Care Board back in line. And there's, you know, a host of other things, but we got a big crew here, and so I guess I better turn it back over to Dan.
Even though some things change, some things stay the same. The next is Senator Russ Ingalls, who's been a member since 2019, who serves Essex, Newport, Derby, Holland, Morgan, Linden, and Essex County. He's a chair of the Senate Committee on Institutions, and he's also on the Senate Committee on Transportation.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you for everybody for showing up. I like to see the bigger crowds. It means people are interested in what's going on, and I think that's a very important time in government right now, to make sure that everybody's aware and everybody's here and everybody's engaged, and so we appreciate that very much. You know, it's not a lot of fun to come here and keep on seeing, you know, the same few people, and so the new faces are very welcomed. And so Bobby's got us off to a good start. You're talking about what's going on. I am a chair of institutions. That's all government buildings. We basically bond for money that the CDAC, which is a group that tells what our affordability level is. We're going to spend about $103 million this year in all of what we do in institutions, plus some cash. The cash is yet to be determined. Anytime you have cash sitting around in Montpelier, it kind of gets to be a little bit of a scrap. So we'll see how much we end up with. We are in institutions. We're working on a lot of flooding issues. We had just in the site of the Capitol, we had pretty close to $500 million worth of flooding in the buildings that we had in the 21 buildings. So we're Probably not going to handle a lot of that funding. We're starting to put some monies away. The governor has put in the big bill in his budget monies to take care of that. The good news is that we have 4 insurance companies and we have FEMA. But I think you probably can expect to see before it's all said and done about $100 million worth of monies. They have $60 million identified right now that would be used to match to gather those funds from those funding sources that I mentioned. But so we're probably just kind of park some money away before FEMA gets through their process. FEMA really doesn't allow you to do much until the very, very end, and they approve the plan, and off we go. Locally, we are looking at a new courthouse at some point in time. I think we have stopped the idea of them putting it in what we don't like to call it the hole, but everybody else seems to like to call it the hole. And the reason why we've done that, with the help of the mayor and on my local delegations, we really don't want a non-taxed building in that space at some point in time. That is our biggest revenue, our biggest, brightest jewel on Main Street. We've done our repentance with having the state building there. Very, very attractive building. Nice to have it. It is kind of a condo unit. We do derive some taxes from it. But we want to be careful about using up the best space in our communities to put a government building that we're not going to collect tax from. So we're working pretty hard on that. There's some rumors, and we're starting to look around that the state might not want all that waterfront. And I just think that we need to be very mindful of that. Anytime that we have a chance to grab waterfront back, that we ought to be looking at that. We can come up with our own plans, our own visions, public area space, access. Everybody should have the right to be able to get on the water in any way, shape that they can. And really kind of looking around in those areas, so we're watching out with that. As far as transportation, we are looking at another $875 million budget. $326 million of that comes from the state. The rest, $478 million, comes from the Fed. So that is a fund that is pretty much more than half of the monies comes from the federal government. The focus is still on infrastructure. We have for over 11 years now spent over $100 million on paving. Last year we spent 140. We're down to $130 million this year, and that's still a vast amount of money. I wouldn't be surprised that with the inflation taming a little bit, that $130 million probably does about what $140 million did last year. Again, we're up on bridge repair. We're putting more monies back to the towns so that they can catch up on some of their projects. So we're kind of humming along there. The 3 things that I'm really most mindful about coming into this session is public safety being one. Affordability in our state. We just got to make sure that we can afford to live here. There's so many people. There's so many people that are. I mean, let's face it, 75% of Vermonters are paycheck to paycheck. That's the way it is. We don't like to admit that, but I think it would surprise you. It would really, really surprise you, the people that are struggling. Sometimes appearances don't tell the whole story. And then we have to be really, really mindful about the people that can't advocate for themselves. I've done very well in life. I'm very, very fortunate that I have. But I think my eye-opener was the other day. Last weekend, I went into the grocery store. And I was shocked. I mean, I know we go to the grocery store and all that, but I was just shocked. I was shocked about the costs of what I saw. When you just go down through there over and over and over and over and over, we just got to make sure that we don't price our people out of this state. And that's a very, very, very big concern. Public safety, this drug epidemic that we have going on. I mean, they think they want to cure it with free injection sites and stuff like that. I mean, we just gotta get a handle on this. I'm sure the hospital would be very, very thankful not to have as many visitors as they have. All through life, I mean, you just go and this drug problem has affected every part of our system of living. Just talking the other day about with the folks that came in from all the public transportation. People in the Chittenden County don't even want to get on the bus. It's dangerous. So we just have to keep a really good mind on that. Housing, very, very big. The governor, it was pretty hard to figure out really kind of what was going on. The governor gave some numbers. 28,000 people, 45 to 65, have left our state. We have 16,000 fewer kids in school, and that sounds like a great number. I says, okay, well, we have that many people leaving the state. We should have plenty of housing. But 48,000 people over the age of 65 have moved into our state, and those numbers are all in the last 12 years. So we have to be very, very mindful on housing. We have to keep it going that people can live the American dream by going from renting to owning. The vast amount of wealth in our nation is created by people owning their own homes, and we have to do everything that we can do to keep that dream alive. Other than that, it is a big day. It's always nice to end before we get a hook. And I want to throw one last plug out there. I kind of sent a letter out the other day. You folks are very well represented. You really, really are. We have a great, vast group of legislators that serve on all types of committees. We have a bigger than normal chairmanships between houses and the senates, and we have people on key committees on appropriations, housing, economic development, fish and wildlife. Every aspect of what is important to us, we are being covered, and I want to thank them for as hard as they work, because I see it every day down there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Ingalls. Next up is Representative Mike Marcotte, who has been serving since 2004, and he represents Orleans, Lamoille, Jay, Westfield, Lowell, Eden, Newport, Coventry, and Irisburg, and he is the chair of the House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development.
Morning, everyone. Dan, thank you. Thanks to the Chamber. Also, thank you to the Newport City Downtown Development for sponsoring today's meeting as well. But thank you all for coming out. It is great to see a big crowd here. Just want to talk about Newport City Downtown. That's it's a requirement when a city has a designated downtown that they have a development corporation such as we have here. It's really great to see it taking off. I know it had been left kind of wavering in the wind for a while, but Rick's been doing a great job over there, really pushing it. I'm really happy with their partnership with the Career Technical Center at North Country to provide that live studies for students to learn the trades. So CTE for me has been extremely important during my time in the legislature. We continue to work. This year there is a CTE bill that we're working to make some changes to CTE, trying to change the funding source so that it becomes decoupled from the regular school budget so they have their own budget, trying to make sure that there's not a disincentive for the high schools to be sending students to the Career Center. Making some other changes. So that's in Senate Education. Now we'll start taking that up and taking testimony on that. I know the House Education Committee has already looked at it. They've got some other concerns that they're dealing with, so the Senate will begin that process. So I look forward to continuing the push on career technical education has something that is important as getting a college education as well. So we hope that we continue forward with that. We know that our workforce, although our unemployment rates are low, we have seen our workforce participation shrink. It was shrinking before COVID, and it really shrank during COVID. And, one of the big issues that we're dealing with now is housing. Housing is probably the number one issue with workforce right now. Trying to figure that out, we put a lot of money into housing over the last few years. The problem that we're facing is some of Act 250, but we're also facing supply chain issues, or we did, increased costs of all materials, which are increasing the costs of building, and workforce shortage. So with all of these things together, we're putting a lot of money in, but we're only making small incremental progress in getting more housing in the state. So it's something that my committee doesn't tackle, but we certainly do support what we can do to increase our housing in the state. The VHIP program is a great program, trying to bring blighted buildings up to code, getting them back on the tax rolls in the towns, and be able to bring more people to utilize those houses and apartments. We are taking on, we have a full agenda this year in my committee. We also do consumer protection, and one of the biggest pieces of consumer protection that we're dealing with this year is data security, data protection. I think we all want to have control of our own data, and right now we have very little, if any, control of our data. We're trying to create a system where you can opt in when you sign up for something, whether or not you want your data shared. So we're working on that bill. There's 15 other states right now that have passed some type of data protection, data security bill. So we've been looking at those states. We're trying to align more with several states that are more closely aligned for a model law. Ultimately, it should be the federal government that deals with this problem, not the states. With the dysfunction that we have in Washington, I don't think you'll see anything come out of there. So it's left up to us, the states, to make sure that our people are protected. We're also looking at all of the programs that we put in the last few years. So Friday we held a hearing with our healthcare committee, trying to look at all of the nursing programs that we put into place to try to get more people into the nursing field, and also as we train them to keep them here in Vermont so they're in our hospitals. We're starting to see some progress there, so we'll be looking and working with our appropriations committee on how we can continue those programs, because a lot of them we started, they're pilot programs. If they're working, then I think we need to appropriate more dollars to get more nurses into the medical field. So with that, Dan, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and hopefully we have some time for questions. So thank you.
Thank you. The next representative is Mark Higley, and a little correction, he's in the same district as Mike Marcotte, which is the Orleans-Lamoille district. Those aren't the towns they represent. The towns are Jay, Westfield, Lowell, Eden, Newport, and Coventry. So, thank you, Mark. And Mark serves on the House Committee on Government Affairs and Government Operations and Military Affairs, and the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you. So I serve on GovOps and Military Affairs. We're right out of the gate with a number of issues. You may have remembered the Truth and Reconciliation Bill. There was 3 commissioners that were appointed to look at all the adverse effects of Vermont's laws and policies throughout our history in regards to what to do about it. Well, one of the commissioners resigned. There was no ability to appoint another one, so they had to create a new panel. And there was a $1.1 million fund increase for that, and an extension of 10 months. And there was a provision in there regards to closed meetings, which the press really had concerns with, and I understand why. Change to limited access meetings, same situation, but that's one bill that we pumped out there, and it's in appropriations now. We also deal with the Cannabis Control Board. You may have heard where there's a number of issues there. They want to increase the THC content for some products. One of the issues is some of the dispensaries are going out because of the legal market. Currently, they need a couple of more compliance enforcement and education compliance officers. We also heard from counselors, drug and alcohol counselors, that they're really concerned about this increase in THC content. Kids are still getting it, whether it's through friends or through the home itself, and they're worried about this THC content going up in an individual, let's say a gummy product. And what else? There's an ethics bill. It's looking to kind of incorporate everybody, municipalities, as well as the state legislature and executive branch for a broad policy of ethics supported by the Vermont Ethics Commission. Some concerns there as well. We heard from Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns, especially on conflict of interest piece. As you can imagine, the state legislature is a lot different than municipalities, and a lot of times select boards and other small towns have some conflicts, whether it's, the road commissioner is also a select board member and things like that. So that's something we really have to take a look at. One of the things on my LCAR committee, Mike had talked about housing and affordability. There's some new residential building energy standards that were proposed. They're updated every 3 years. I went into the committee last year under S100 and asked for those to be postponed for 2 years. It didn't happen, but then it came through LCAR, and LCAR had the same testimony from different home builders and so on, saying that these new residential building energy standards could increase the cost of a house between $18,000 and $28,000. So we were able to postpone action on those until July. There was a study committee throughout the summer on S100, which again, for me, is a real concern. If everything was administered that the study committee requested, it would be a full-blown statewide building codes, with fire and safety being the entity that would regulate that. There would be, through OPR, Office of Professional Regulation, a certain certifications for contractors under the residential building energy standards. And again, I can see a huge cost there increase. And again, there's nobody here from the Education Committee, so I just wanted, this is from Scott Beck, and there's been a lot of questions about why that 18.5% increase in education funding could go up. And so he's on the Ways and Means Committee, and it's a laundry list of the large increases. Universal Schools meals added $28 million. Healthcare premiums went up 16%. Very high staff ratios. Inflation on everything else. Student weighting changes. Failure to fully implement special education reforms from 2018. Increase in pension costs of $10 million. Collective bargaining agreements. The retention of school positions being funded by one-time COVID dollars. High capital construction costs. A cap on district rates that has encouraged spending, and a consumption tax growth that has returned to 2%. And then we just, through the Budget Adjustment Act, there was an additional $13 million taken out of the Education Reserve Fund to pay for retired teachers' COLA. Back in 2016, it's tied to the Consumer Price Index. The Consumer Price Index was low enough that there would have been a negative COLA for that year. We negotiated that wouldn't happen. There was a cap put on it as well. Well, there was supposedly misunderstanding as to the cap because now this consumer price index is really high, and that cap would have made it around 2.5%. They wanted 3.8%. So again, we changed the rules around that, and that's where that additional 13 million, 3-point-something million last year, 9-point-something taken out this year. But so anyway, I'll end it there. There's certainly a lot more than this going on, but I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. And the next representative is Woody Page, who's been a member since 2019 and serves Orleans 2, which is the town of Newport, city of Newport. And he is on the House Committee on Appropriations.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you, everyone, for coming. Being a junior representative, it's by the time they get to you, and you'll know this, Representative Sims, that by the time they get to you, pretty much everything has been discussed. So, but I'll try to add some more to the discussions here. What I'm holding in my hand is the proposed budget adjustment. It's H839, and in this document it goes over the description of the various agencies. It also tells you where the funds are coming from, whether it be general fund or transportation fund or special funds or global commitment funds. And there are certain thoughts about the budget adjustment. What it does is it takes us through to the end of the fiscal year, which is the end of June. And there are some that feel that, this should not be the budget in which we should add more money to it for additional items. It should only be to help out those agencies to get through the end of the fiscal year. Unfortunately, things happen, such as the June or July flooding that we have. So you have to add some of these things into it. I suppose in some ways our Appropriations Committee maybe goes a little bit further in what it adds to it. And fortunately, we have the Senate, who seems to be a little bit more mature and more thoughtful at times than our House Appropriations or our House Legislature. I'll just go over some key things here that you might be interested in. Last year, and right now we're in budget year 2024, and beginning in July, it'll be budget 25. And, I should mention the $35 million that Senator Starr mentioned about. 2 weeks ago, it is true. We had an e-board. It's made up of the two economists, and they came and gave a glowing report about how revenues were much higher than anticipated. And we had $32 million. Up to that point, I think our Appropriations Committee was doing pretty good with what they were spending. But as soon as we saw that $32 million, there were members that had other ideas on how we should spend it. And Senator Starr is right. We have spent it all. And unfortunately, we don't know what's going to be coming up ahead in the future. Maybe we'll have another natural disaster this spring or this summer, and FEMA will come back. They'll demand matching funds to pay for some of these things, and we may not have those additional funds to pay to help our citizens. So that is a concern. So anyways, beginning at the end, when we disbanded this past summer, we had $8.56 billion for our fiscal year 2024 budget. Now We've increased it by $132 million to $8.692 billion. So we've gone from $8.56 billion to $8.692 billion. Quite an increase. Some of the things that we have spent that money on, and I wouldn't say it was reckless, but perhaps there are some things that we could have held off for. For our base appropriations adjustments, we spent $1.81 million for the public safety workforce, for overtime that's been done with them. We spent $510,000 to the Cannabis Regulation Fund, which Representative Higley mentioned. We've also spent updates on our funding associated with Medicaid. We've added $1.75 million to housing from the general fund. We've added, for the Vermont Department of Health, syringe programs with $500,000. $2.77 million to the Department of Health for costs attributed to contracted nurses. We still have an issue with traveling nurses that we're dependent upon, and I'm sure, our hospital staff here could talk more about that as well. The Department of Aging and Independent Living, $14 million for financial relief for skilled nursing facilities. These are all things that are necessary, unfortunately, and they're becoming more so as time goes on, as we unfortunately get older. Flooding, okay? We added $30 million to the Secretary of Administration for FEMA matching funds for costs incurred due to the July flooding event. We transferred $6 million from General Fund to the Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund as our state contribution to local match funding for FEMA public assistance. We dedicated $10 million to assist municipalities impacted by the July funding. We committed $5 million of ARPA funds to municipalities impacted by the July flooding event. So all these things, as I said, are necessary. Housing, another critical issue. We've added $13.2 million for general assistance emergency housing, and we've provided language to cap the rates that DCF can pay for hotel and motel rooms. This is another thing that's crippling our state, and that is what we're paying, literally millions and millions of dollars on the hotel voucher program for those that are homeless. It's a tough spot to be in. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. We do have to help our homeless people. It's necessary. But our hotel administrators are really, in some ways, putting the screws to the state by how much the state is paying for those hotel rooms. And what we've attempted to do is try to put a cap on it. There are some that say that cap isn't strong enough, and there are some that say it's too weak. Maybe we're somewhere in the middle. We've heard testimony from other areas of the state, such as, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm done.
Well, I never thought I'd have the issue of someone not being able to see me. That was just, anyway. Thank you. The final representative today is Catherine Sims. She's in the Orleans 4 district, serving Albany, Craftsbury, Glover, Greensboro, and is on the House Committee on Ways and Means.
Thank you, Dan. So great to see you all. Thanks for coming out early on a Monday morning. Catherine Sims on Ways and Means, and also one of the co-chairs of the Tripartisan Rural Caucus. It's a real honor to be down there representing you with my colleagues, making sure that Montpelier knows about the unique challenges and opportunities that our rural communities face up here. So focuses for me this year, housing, climate resilience and flood recovery, and affordability. In committee and House Ways and Means, we've already voted a bill out around property tax abatement for flood-impacted properties, knowing that too many folks in our state this year saw their houses totally destroyed, and so we're abating property taxes for the statewide ed fund for those properties. And we've been spending a lot of time digging into the school ed finance challenge. As Representative Higley walked us through, there are numerous pressures on school budgets these days, and at the same time, we know that property taxpayers can't afford an 18% increase in property taxes as estimated in the December 1 letter. And so we're focused hard on how we can meet the needs of our schools, how we can think about cost containment and find additional kind of one-time dollars to help offset those property tax rates. So we'll know a lot more in the coming weeks as final school warned budgets come in, but we're expected to see a very significant total cost of education this year, and we'll be wrestling with how we can handle that and also not unduly burden our property taxpayers. We're also looking at some ideas around climate-resilient infrastructure. How can we make smart investments up front so that Vermont is less vulnerable to the weather events that we're seeing and helping save money in the long run? We know that the price tag for the July flood is already up over $1 billion. So as we face more and more weather events, how can we be safer, less vulnerable, and save money in the long run? For me, outside of committee, there are a couple of other big bills that I've been working on. I was one of the lead sponsors of a tripartisan housing bill, knowing that we are facing a housing crisis all across the state for all income levels, service needs, family sizes. And so this bill looks at making investments in some of the programs that we know that are working, like VHIP to bring rental units back online, the Missing Middle Home Ownership Program, which provides low-cost capital to developers to help create new units all over the state. The bill also knows that we can't buy our way out of this housing crisis, so looks at regulatory reform, including Act 250, about how we can remove some of the permitting barriers for downtowns and villages, where we know that smart growth makes the most sense, rehabbing units to bring them back online and building dense infill development in our walkable villages and downtowns. So housing is a big focus for me, as well as EMS. We know that if you have a medical event and you call 911, you want an ambulance to show up at your door. But increasingly, the cost of reimbursement and the cost of service, there's a huge gap there. And that means that too many of our services are in crisis. Meaning that things are falling back to municipal budgets at rates that can't be sustained or leading to a decline or gap in service. And so I've been working on an EMS stabilization bill that looks at short-term fixes we can make around Medicaid reimbursement, as well as long-term systems overhaul modeled after what we're trying to do around dispatch. Spending a year gathering the data and research, creating a task force to make recommendations for systems overhaul. And lastly, I've been working on some rural working landscape bills. Grateful for the work that Chair Marcotte's committee did last year on the right to repair agriculture and forestry equipment, so that our loggers and farmers, if they own a piece of equipment, they have all the tools that they need to be able to fix it. And we are, as we go into the budget adjustment and the budget this year, advocating for more support for our loggers who were left out of the flood recovery so far, but were impacted. And as our weather gets warmer and wetter, like it is out today, the number of days that folks can log in the winter is rapidly diminishing. And those are businesses that already operate on really tight margins and yet do critical work to help our community be more resilient in the face of climate change. So looking at developing some reimbursement models to help invest in the clean water mitigation work that our loggers do, modeled after what other states like upstate New York have been doing to keep our loggers doing the vital work that they do in our woods. So I'll pause there, but great to be here with you all. Look forward to questions and discussion. Thanks.
Well, thank you, everybody. At this time, we'll open up the floor for questions. And as always, the line starts at the little intersection over there, and you can come up and give maybe one or two sentences for context, and then please ask your question. So whoever wants to come up first. No, we're going to do that next time. We'll get it set up ahead next time in the fall. So please, I know one person who has a question. Are there other people that, if anyone else wants to get up, just get in the line and we'll call you when you get there. And when you ask your question, please state your name and the town you're from. Okay.
Thanks. One question, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Specify to who the reps you're addressing.
Okay, great. Ken Wells, live in the town of Brownington. Thanks for everybody coming out today, especially our local reps, because I know it's a little rough weather, especially over in the Willoughby Lake area. I had I get several questions, but I'll start with the one. Senator Bobby Starr, you've long been an advocate for the farmer. We're down to 85 farms in Orleans County. The price of 100-weight milk is under $17 an hour. We pay $6 a gallon at local mini-marts for milk. Where do you see farming in the next 5 to 10 years, Bobby? And are there any bills in committee that are going to give some help to the farmers?
Thank you. We're down to 496 statewide, but I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding about the number of cows has only dropped just a little bit, and the milk production has stayed almost level, from years back. And earlier this morning, I spoke of helping our dairy farmers, and why that is because we have quite a few large farms with anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 cows per farm. So, like my friend Red Shappett has got maybe 2,500 to 2,800 cows. Well, that's 10 280 cow farms. And if you got back to the 100 cow farms, it's a whole 28 of them. So, but earlier today I spoke about how we paid the DMC payment premium that cost us as taxpayers about $1 million, and it brought in 26 and almost $27 million. We have the current use program, which pays a big portion of the town tax for our farmers. So as far as milk pricing, 25 years ago, I guess it was, or more, I set up in Vermont, set up the Northeast Dairy Compact program, which was a good deal. And all 6 New England states were in on that, but we could never get New York to go in on that. And it stabilized the milk price. And that worked good, but the milk buyers, the manufacturers of dairy products, and they hated that thing because they couldn't gouge the public and they couldn't gouge the farmer, but they were able to make a profit. That turned about 105 years. Took them 5 years to beat us on that in Washington. But in those 5 years, it generated about $150 million, and nobody went broke. My phone basically stopped ringing, like the Maytag repairman. The farmers weren't calling because they were being treated fairly. The consumers were treated fairly, and the people selling the products were treated fairly. But that isn't the case, and I don't like talking about businesses, but I know we have a store in our area that you can go get your gallon of milk for $3 and something. Well, I mean, it's worth, I mean, you pay more than that for water. And so, you know, there's outside forces that are hindering all this. And it's mainly right in Washington, D.C., at the federal government where prices are set. But Vermont does as much as we possibly can for our dairy farmers in our rural areas. It's very, very important to our economy, and the legislators know that. Kind of a long answer.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Laurie Grimm. I'm a Newport City resident. I have actually already had a short private conversation with Representative Sims about this, but I would like to open this up to our other legislators. And this has to do with the dispatch centers. I was around actually working in healthcare when Governor Shumlin took it upon the legislature at that point to consolidate our dispatch centers into two areas, and now here we are again. And at that time, whether you were here or not, or you may or may not know, we lost a really valuable resource in our Vermont State Police Barracks here in Derby with the dispatch center. And at the same time, we also lost the Career Center program training EMS and dispatch. And that was a huge loss. We lost like $85,000 worth of grant equipment that had come in through grants that they have gotten. And it really took out some things. And what I understand from Representative Sims is what they're looking at is putting a center in St. Johnsbury. And what I want to know is what our legislators are going to do to try to get that back here. I fully recognize that our Newport City Police Department is doing a great job locally, but I think that we've got to get those things rolling back into our county, because not only is it going to benefit our county, get people moving here, but it will definitely benefit our career center if we can get back to that type of training. And I'd like to know what you think.
Senator Starr.
Well, the dispatch center at the state police office, I don't know if you worked there or was part of it or what, but we had some serious problems keeping help calling out, and that wasn't just happening in Derby. It was happening all over all the dispatch centers. And I'll tell you, the employees that worked there didn't help the cause any of keeping that dispatch center. I've sat on appropriations for quite some time, and constantly they'd be down there wanting more pay and complaining about the hours, and of course it wasn't just us, it was the transportation committees and everybody involved. And the state came back and said, look, we'll bring some of these people into one central location and it'll work better. Well, I didn't support that. I thought we should straighten out the situations that were not working well within our own areas. But in the end, they moved it all to Chittenden County, and total disaster, and as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of the fire departments and EMS people, Newport was good enough to set up a system. And I haven't heard one complaint from any of the firemen or the EMS people from the way it's being handled at the present time. So I don't know. Catherine might know more about this than I do, because over on the health side. But I really question whether it'd be a good idea to bring it back to the state police barracks because of past experiences.
Senator Ingalls. And just so everyone knows, they're to-go containers. All the food has to be taken home by somebody here. So
to expand on Senator Starr, you will not see the state expand any type of dispatching, none whatsoever. The state is going to get out of the dispatching for a lot of the same reasons as Senator Starr said. Newport has been a shining example of what's how to dispatch. I can tell you that I've been involved in the Essex County because they have some dead zones over there. I've actually in working with Shanine's office. Northern Borders dispatching over there are doing a good job. They handle the vast majority of dispatching. They have one blind spot. They're working to get a tower up on Mount Monadnock. They're in a little bit of a conundrum with Leamington, who owns the tower, because they want 4 times the amount of what this dispatching group is spending on 8 other towers. So that's a little bit of a rub. But we do have about $30 to $90 million coming into that between New Hampshire and Vermont and Northern Border grants. I've got a call into Peter Welch's office to expand to get that area at least taken care of, but it's coming in over from the New Hampshire side, which we don't care. We don't care. We want to be sure that when that phone call gets made, that it gets dispatched properly, and then somebody has the opportunity to get there. But I don't believe in anything that I see. The state is, if the state could do it right now, the state would absolutely positively get out of dispatching. And that's what's going to happen. So sometimes the problem isn't solved by government. The problem's solved from within. It's solved in communities. And and again, I think Newport has done a really, really nice job of stepping up and making sure that there's very reliable dispatching, at least in this area. And soon, if I have anything to say about it, the North Country of Essex County and that whole area, all the way right down into Maidstone and Guildhall and that area over there. I think we're working on some stuff over there. So thank you.
Representative Marcotte.
So back in 2015 or even before that, my committee at the time dealt with telecommunications and utilities, and I was involved with the dispatching issue that was beginning to happen. So at the time we had 4 what were called PSAPs. So they were call taking 4 places around the state. There was Derby, Williston, Westminster, and there was one more, Rutland. So it was becoming evident that this PSAP was well functioning, doing a good job, but the state needed to get out of the business of dispatching. They were doing the 911 call taking, but they were also dispatching for not just themselves, but for other agencies as well. So it was determined by then Public Safety Commissioner Keith Flynn that we needed to close Derby and Westminster. And we fought pretty hard to try to stop that from happening because we knew that if you're dispatching, you need local people to dispatch. We were told, no, that's in this day and age, you don't have to worry about that. That's all taken care of. Williston can handle it. Well, we found out how well Williston could handle it because they were dispatching Newport City when there was something going on in Newport Center, didn't realize where people lived. It was a mess. Fortunately, the city of Newport Police Department began offering a dispatching service to the local area EMS and ambulance service, fire departments, talking to the towns. One problem that was encountered was that the state was offering that service of dispatching at no cost. There were a few municipalities that were paying for it, but not all. and up here no one was paying for it. How can we ask a municipality in our area to now pay Newport City for dispatching when they're getting it for free, even though it wasn't the greatest service? And so I think things have been evolving even more where Newport has taken it up. I don't know what the plan is for St. Johnsbury. I don't know if that's a 911 call taking center outside of what dispatching is, because they're two distinct things that happen there. So I think we need to understand that. If it's another PSAP, another call taking for 911, then I don't have a problem with that. But Newport City has invested a lot of money into their system, and they're doing a really good job, because I haven't heard anything either. So we'll continue to take a look at what's going on there and how do we develop a system that works for all of us.
Representative Higley?
So the current Public Safety Commissioner has come into our committee, GovOps, a couple of times talking about the work with the task force. It appears that there's an additional $9 million of a federal grant. There's concerns around what that money can be used for. We just changed some wording regarding that to make sure that the task force has a say as to how and when that money can be used. They really don't want to initiate even pilot projects until they know for sure, what's going to work and what's not going to work. Again, they don't want to invest this money and find out it was the wrong move. So it's a slow process from what I see.
Representative Page?
I will just say we have a good program, and why get rid of a good program when there's nothing wrong to it? So, of course, I'll support it.
So Representative Sims has stepped out, but we'll go with the next question. And there's 8 minutes left for everybody.
Hi, Mayor Sullivan. I just heard 3 topics, and I just need a bit of clarification on one ask. So Representative Marcotte, who I was fortunate to be on his committee, and he was a great mentor, you're speaking to the nursing situation. You're going to be reviewing that. I ask that you also look at, when we have traveling nurses, how it does cut into the specialty nurses that are needed and is causing an impact on us losing specialty doctors here. So that's all I ask. I heard about the potential shoot-up sites. I'd like to know if there's been a deep dive into the illegalities federally in your conversations. And my last one on the $32 million that I've heard everybody say was spent, I just want clarification. Was that an old appropriation of revenue that hit as cash and is gone? Or was it a new revenue stream that wasn't appropriated and everybody's just going for? Thank you.
Okay. Senator Starr?
I didn't follow you too good, but are you talking in regards to the supplemental budget adjustment?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I said it quite clear
I might have missed it, that's why I asked.
that the revenue projections were 32 to 35 million of new dollars. And over on the Senate side in approach, we said, well, that's going to be good, because the supplemental budget, as Woody stated and I stated, is you have some agencies that underspend, some that go over a little bit, and you take that money and you move it around to balance out the budget and to balance out the state money that's already been appropriated. But the 32 to 35 million was supposedly we could use it in the 25 budget to cover, everything that automatically increases, like wages and the rents and because all the different agencies pay rent on their particular area that they use. But as the supplemental budget passed the House and came to us, on Friday we were looking that over, and the 32 to 35 has already been spent on basically new items. So it was an increase in the 24 budget over the 23 budget. And of course, that will bump up the 25 budget if you spend it. But there was quite a few one-time items in there that would disappear at the end of the year. So the money's proposed to be spent, but I don't think that's going to fly very well over on the Senate side. It may, but I don't think it will. The other issue you had was visiting nurses. In some way, we caused some of that ourselves. Maybe 5 years ago, it came to us that, well, we should take our nurses' licenses, and so that you would have reciprocity with other states, and then we'll have these nurses come from out of state to supply our shortage. And it really sounded good. I mean, we could get a few from New Hampshire, and they might get a few from us, but Vermont's a nice state to live in, so we thought that we would get more than we would lose. Well, the guys with all the brains that don't work but think said, well, we'll set up this Visiting Nurses Association, and golly, the nurses can move anywhere they want, and we can jack the price. And, it's cost our hospital, I don't know, Tom told me, but I am on the board at VNA, and it's cost VNA about $1 million. So the hospital's probably $2 or $3 million, and
I've only got a couple minutes left, so I just wanted to give anyone else a chance to chime in.
Okay, but it's not a very good deal.
I meant to say before about the nurses. One of the things I'm in charge of in the institutions committee are state colleges, and we've gone from graduating 400 nurses a year to over 1,000 this coming year. The biggest plan is trying to get them to stay here. The market of them being able to travel and to make vastly amounts more money, is very, very appealing to them. I know I have people in the business, friends that have kids in the business, and they've gotten right into that traveling nursing part. But the state, with the colleges, we should be up over 1,000 graduated nurses this year, next year, and so we have a big emphasis on that. So hopefully that will alleviate some of that. I'm not going to talk about the budget. I will say about the injection sites. It has worked nowhere in the world. In fact, it's turned any of those sites into open-air drug markets. Portland tried a drug-free zone, injection site zone. Portland, they shut it down. It's been passed in 7 states. There's only New York has one going, and it's been a big disappointment. And California actually passed that you could have injection sites, and the governor of California was smart enough to veto it. So safe injection sites, if it comes to your neighborhood, really just say no.
Representative Marcotte? You only got 1.5 minutes. Perfect. Sorry.
So traveling nurses, the whole reason why we promoted and we've been promoting loan repayment scholarships for nursing is, number one, to combat traveling nurses. And so in our testimony that we received on Friday, we're understanding now that the companies that are operating the traveling nurses program have reduced what they're paying those nurses quite considerably, unless they're a specialty. And so it's not quite as lucrative anymore for a nurse to become a traveling nurse unless they like that lifestyle and want to move around. Again, what Russ said, we're looking at, we've actually increased the number of nurses that are going through our programs in the state, which should increase our capabilities of retaining these nurses, along with the loan repayments and the scholarships that we provide, because there are, if they accept those loan repayments and those scholarships, then there's a requirement that they work in the state, in one of the hospitals within the state or a designated agency. So we're hoping that is going to continue to grow. And safe injection sites, I didn't vote for it. And the budget, Bobby took care of that. So thank you.
Higley, Representative Page.
Yes, I'll just talk briefly about the injection sites. Before that, it is new revenue, okay, as Bobby said. When we discuss the injection sites, and there's another name for it, they don't like to use injection sites, the term injection sites. I can't remember what it is. But it was estimated it would cost like $1 million per injection site. And it was scheduled to have like 2 sites in Vermont starting off. The monies would come from the opioid settlement fund, which would take care of that. And as Representative Marcotte said, I did not vote for it either. I think it's bad. I don't think it works. I think it enables those individuals that are using to continue to use, and perhaps does not get them the aid and assistance to get off of those drugs. So I have a big concern. It has apparently worked to some success in some places in Canada and elsewhere, but in the U.S. it has not. So, thank you.
So this concludes the first legislative breakfast in our series. The next breakfast will be February 19th with Senator Robert Starr and Representative David Templeman and Mark Higley scheduled to attend. There is a sponsorship spot available. If anyone who wants to sponsor it, please let me know. And I'd like to again thank today's sponsor, Newport Downtown Development Corporation, and NEK-TV, and members of the media and the East Side for the wonderful food. And they weren't kidding when they said there's to-go things. Whoever wants to take the rest of the food home can. And especially the legislators for coming here and being part of this series. And I think that's why we have such great representation in the Northeast Kingdom, is your participation. And thank you all again. Thank you all. Have a great day.